Anyway, let's talk about Lampedusa, shall we? It is, in case you're not familiar with it, and who would be, by the way, perhaps until recently, it's a small island off the coast of Sicily. I think, actually, I've got a little map that I can bring up on the screen and just show you, just to give you a little bit more context. There you go, everybody. Anyway, 11,000 migrants have landed on their shores in the past week alone. Mark White is actually there and joins me live now. Good evening to you, Mark White. Bring us up to speed briefly on what has been going on in the last kind of few days or so over there.
Well, this island with a population of 6,000 permanent residents has found itself overwhelmed by that surge in migrant numbers who are arriving here in recent weeks. It has been, as you said, 11,000 just in the past 10 days, but actually 62,000 have arrived here since the 1st of June. And across other islands and on the Italian mainland, those who've crossed from the Mediterranean total so far 130,000. Italy says that by the end of the year they expect the number of migrants to have crossed the Mediterranean into Italy to be 200,000. They are dealing with a very significant issue, but they are also in dispute with a number of European countries in terms of burden sharing and whether France and Germany will actually reverse its current policy of not taking those arriving in the likes of Lampedusa.
Yeah, I was literally just about to ask you about the EU response, because there is a bit of criticism here about whether or not these people should be widely distributed, if you like, not just within the EU, but beyond. How do you think that will actually end?
Well, it is the European Union's goal to have a proper burden sharing process in place so that each of the countries take a share of those who are arriving into the European Union. But it's just not working out as planned. There are certain countries that just don't want to take a certain share of migrants, others who believe that actually because of their geographical position, likes of Italy, Greece and Spain, that they have many migrants who land on their shores and they want other countries in Europe to burden share better. It's all a bit of a headache for the European Union, and it's also testing the likes of the Schengen agreement, which of course allows free travel across European Union borders. But in some countries it's far from free at the moment. You've got France now putting on border checks between Italy and France to stop those migrants who are getting into Italy proper then from crossing into France. You've got Austria putting up border checks as well, Germany too. So it is a significant issue going forward, what the European Union does really to try to ensure that both Schengen and the burden sharing agreement works properly, because at the moment it certainly isn't.
And just very brief final question to you. You're there, you're on the ground. What do the locals make to all this?
Well, I mean, there are some that, have sympathy for those that are crossing from often wretched conditions in their own countries. But many people here, I think, are very concerned at the huge surge on such a small island and their ability to cope with that. And, viewers in the UK might be watching and really saying, why is this something we should care about? But actually it is, because history tells us that those that arrive on Europe's southern borders or eastern borders, or whichever route they take into Europe, often then find themselves heading to the northwest shores of France with a view to trying to get across the English Channel to the UK. So it affects all of Europe, and it certainly affects the UK as well.
Interesting stuff. That's Mark White there, live from Lampedusa. I mean, I hear all that and all these travels that people are going on. I can't understand how on earth they're financing all of this, all of these different stock, because they're not staying put in one place. They're paying a lot of people, I suspect, to take them a lot of different places. But anyway, what do you make to it all?
Well, this has been an issue for the Italians for more than a decade. And as your map helpfully reminded us, the little dot that was south of Sicily on your map is Malta. So Lampedusa is
I might bring the map back up while we're talking about
well to the southwest of Malta. You know, it's very close to the Tunisian, much closer to the Tunisian coast than the rest of Italy. But nevertheless, it's part of Italy. And once you're there, you are in Italy. And the big problem for the Italians, 10,000 in 10 days, population of Lampedusa is something like 6,000, 6,500. Right? So you're talking about culture changing, huge numbers of people in one go. The people who've been most disappointed at the current time, apart from those who live on Lampedusa itself, will be those who voted for Giorgia Meloni, because she said that she was going to change all of this when she came into office, and quite plainly, she hasn't.
And she's also talking tough. She says, and I quote, that what's going on there is an act of war, and she also calls it an invasion. Is language like that helpful?
No, not at all. And, saying that this is a war and an invasion, all of that doesn't do anything to deal with the fact that there are people that are fleeing the conditions in which they are living. And the answer is, as Mark White was just saying, more cooperation between the EU states in order to take a process which is currently out of control and unmanaged and dangerous for many of the people taking part in it, to one which has more coordination and more management and more control, and therefore can be more humane.
What does the coordination take you to in the end if it just means that lots of European countries, some of them have already said they're not willing to take any, like Hungary or Poland, it just mean taking more migrants and moving them around? Because in the end, that encourages more people to come via the deeply dangerous routes that Michelle's been talking about.
Well, it depends how you do it, and I also think that the policies should be put in place to make places that are currently people are forced to flee from not have to flee from. So, we shouldn't go around bombing Libya, for example, like we did 10 years ago, because that's hardly helped. And yes, there do need to be safe routes from big transit hubs in Tunisia and Libya and so on, and to bring some management of the system under control. Now, for the EU, that's going to be extremely difficult, because as we're seeing, the rise of these tough-talking, no-doing leaders like Giorgia Meloni, who will scapegoat, but they can't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say as well, you tell me what you think to that language, because there will be some people watching that just see the kind of hordes of boats there. You hear numbers like 11,000 in a week when the starting population was only 6. You got pretty much double that coming over on top of those numbers in the space of a week. Some people watching that will say, actually, they do think that language is accurate, and they would praise people for using that language. But again, it divides opinions. Where are you on that?